Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Okay, so welcome to our first newly titled Best Practice in Student Transition Subcommittee work. We have on the phone David Rivas, and we have Kim here from the Early Learning Council to work with us as well. But we're pretty short today as far as membership. Let's go ahead, Seth, and begin with the roll call so the folks that are here know exactly who is who, as well as we have Kay Turan coming on her way, and she'll come in a few minutes late. So, Seth, would you mind starting us off with that?
Yvonne Curtis. Mark Mulvihill.
Here.
David Reeves.
Here.
Lynn Saxton. Kay Turan. Kim Williams.
Here.
Okay, great. Yvonne is normally the chair of this committee, but she is out of the state right now and at a conference and asked for me to substitute. So I'm assuming my role, like I did for the last couple OEIB meetings, where I'm alternate chair. So it's the age-old, you get what you pay for, right? So we actually have a pretty good agenda today. Until we get a quorum, we can't move on an action item later on, so we'll just kind of see at what point. But if we could start off a little bit and introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about what your hopes are for this committee. This is our first one, and we're kind of transitioning into a new role here, as well as OEIB's transition into more of a role focus on transition. So if David, if you could just introduce yourself, it's mainly to Kim, and then Dave, what are you hoping for on this subcommittee this year?
Well, I have a background teaching at community college, and I'm president of American Federation of Teachers Oregon, represent and have contact with a lot of faculty in higher education throughout the state. And I'm looking to come up with, I think, a set of best practices or some kind of ideas that we could be talking to schools and colleges and universities about, and how to increase student success. I'd like us to look into some of, what the research, what the evidence shows. I think that often gets overlooked a lot in education nowadays still. And I think, if it requires us doing reports or consulting with other reports or bringing in researchers, I think that's going to be real important, because I don't see us as having done that a lot in Oregon up to now, to be honest. And I think that's a role this committee could take on.
Great. Thanks. Kim.
Well, I'm Kim Williams, and I'm from North Central ESD Early Education, where we deliver Head Start services within a community's preschool setting. And so I'd like to think I have some knowledge from that early childhood piece about transitioning into kindergarten. We work very closely with our kindergarten teachers and with parents in the community about the importance of moving those children forward and how we get them ready. And so I'm hoping I have some expertise in this field. And when I looked at it, I even thought, oh, I think I know something. So there it is.
Great. Thank you. I'll go ahead and introduce the other members of the subcommittee who are not here today. We have Lynn Saxton, the Executive Director of Youth Villages Oregon. And as you can see with both Lynn and Kim, that these are our partners with the Early Learning Council. And we're kind of merging forces a little bit in this subcommittee. I think it's a great idea. It shows the P20 spectrum and bringing in more leadership on this subcommittee, so that's wonderful. Kate, Kay Turan, President and CEO of Volunteers of American Oregon. Kay is also an OEIB member. Kim introduced herself. Dave, Hilda is OEIB Deputy Director for College and Career Readiness, and she's kind of our go-to person here for the subcommittee. Hilda, I don't know if you wanted to share some of your thoughts and hopes for this group this year.
Certainly, thank you very much, Mark. And I also wanted to just note that one of the goals that Nancy Golden had raised around the membership of the subcommittees, the OEIB subcommittees this year, was to find a way to integrate both Early Learning Council and the Higher Ed Coordinating Commission. And we are lucky because David is already a member of the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, so we will have that valuable linkage between the work of this subcommittee and the HEC, as it's affectionately known. My name is Hilda Rosselli, and I have a privilege of working with this subcommittee. I raised my hand really quickly when they were asking for volunteers, because I think this is an exciting place in which to do exactly what was mentioned, to really pinpoint what are those best practices, and also to focus on this additional aspect of the committee's charge around student transitions. We've had lots of conversations about the fact that it's sometimes in between those stages of a student's development that we have to pay close attention and make sure that there's continued support, access, and movement. So I'm looking forward to this, and we'll certainly also find ways to connect requests that you might have for research reports or other kinds of things with our currently one-person research and policy staff. But we may also be wanting to call upon many of our agency partners that can help provide questions and data that would be useful for this committee.
Great. Did you want to mention Kathy Clark's role as executive
Yes,
support?
Kathy Clark is supporting several of the staff at OEIB, and as such, I wanted to alert you to the fact you may be getting emails from her in addition to Seth's postings on the website regarding our meetings. We are streaming live today, and we also have posted materials. We have one additional item that we'll add to the website. We will also try to make sure that you receive individual copies of the materials as close to a week ahead of time as possible. And my understanding is that this committee has not taken formal minutes from the meetings, but I will probably provide committee members with just a refresher on any actions or next steps that were decided at a meeting.
Everybody good with that? Hilda and I talked about, we haven't had formal minutes that we approve as a subcommittee. It's really not necessary, but Hilda is more than willing to provide some in draft form. Does that work for the group? Okay.
Yeah, that should be fine.
What's great about this low attendance at this meeting is we'll make some decisions, huh? That's right. Okay, I'm going to move us along a little bit here. I will add my comments as we talk about the charge a little bit on what I hope we get out of our work this year with our subcommittee, and we'll hit that in just a minute. But I do want to go over the agenda very quickly. Make sure that we understand what's coming, and I'll try to time these adequately. We started a little late, but I think we can catch up for that. So we're going to talk in just a minute about setting the year's scope of work, and then we have a pretty exciting presentation. Dave, we'll put you on the hot seat, David, but I see you brought some support here, so that's great. And I will tell you that Yvonne is kicking herself that because you know how important this is, and so we're looking forward to where we are with the ELL strategic plan update. We also are going to have a presentation of the Secretary of State, the teacher preparation audit. I'm really looking forward to that. That's always a key event in Oregon every year, but we don't always hear about it. We get the report, but we don't always hear and have a presentation. So I think that's great, and I think it's an example of what the charge of the committee is to hear global type of presentations on the good work being done out there. And then we'll do a little review and have closure. So basically that's what our meeting here is today, is really focusing on our charge, our focus for the year, and then we have the two presentations. Any questions on what we hope to accomplish today?
One of the comments that Yvonne and I talked about early on was the fact that we understand that subcommittee members really appreciate the opportunity to sort of think about what's shared at one meeting without having to make actions or decisions right then. So one of the things we'll try to do is to make sure that if we introduce a topic, that we revisit that topic to bring closure to it, to see if there's any specific recommendations or you know, action steps that we're following up on.
Be great. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about our charge. You have that in front of you, and it's titled the OEIB Best Practices in Students Transition Subcommittee. And again, formerly, in a former life, we were Best Practices in Innovation. So the key word, key change obviously there is the word transitions. And I'll just kind of start off this conversation. To me, the alignment with that word is pretty critical, because that's where OEIB has changed its charge as well. We had our retreat, 2 months ago, and focused on really what is the role of OEIB. And what it makes OEIB unique is it is really the only body that is overseeing a complete P20 seamless system. But it isn't necessarily our job to do the work at the points. It's our job more to look at the data, to look at investments, to look at support, and look most specifically at those key transitions. So when you think of all the good work we have going on in pre-K, with the pre-K initiative and the Early Learning Council, but then the critical transition point is as students enter kindergarten, with the kindergarten readiness assessment. Then we look at K-12, where we have over 197 school districts. We have an Oregon Department of Education that is being revamped. So this is a perfect example today, looking at one of the major goals of the department in their strategic plan, as well as in the OEIB strategic plan, is ELL. And what are we doing for those students to meet their targets and increase graduation rates and whatnot. Then you move on to our community colleges after kids leave the system in K-12 into our community college / university system and on to workforce development. So in a way, and I'll open this up for conversation now, but in a way this Best Practices in Student Transition Subcommittee is almost just what that is, a subcommittee of the goal of OEIB, and looking at the best practices at those transition points. So I'll go ahead and read the charge and then open it up here. It's to recommend a research and policy agenda that supports student success with particular focus on transition points such as entry into kindergarten, K-12 transitions, and high school to post-secondary and career. So that is our charge for this revamped, redressed subcommittee. Open it up for conversations right now on thoughts along that line. The charge. I'm increasing my wait time there, Dave.
Can you read that one more time, Mark?
You bet. You want me to start at the beginning with that long rambling rant? I'm teasing you, Dave.
No.
Here we go. You responded quickly on that one. Okay. To recommend a research and policy agenda that supports student success with particular focus on transition points such as entry into kindergarten, K-12 transitions, and high school to post-secondary and career. And I guess, Hilda, I'd have a question on this. What is a nuance there is to recommend a research and policy agenda. You discussed the research arm now of OEIB, which is new and much needed. But tell me a little bit on what the thinking behind that opening sentence is, a research and policy agenda.
Well, part of what you've heard Nancy reference lately is that she sees the role of OEIB as helping to bust barriers. And with that comes an understanding sometimes of recommended policies that may be needed to widen and remove barriers along that pipeline. And with that also, as we focus on some of the strategic investments that are being made, And the future investments, we may need to dig in deeper to understand the actual data and impact. And now there is a separate subcommittee that is looking at outcomes, so we're looking to them to provide the data, but it may be that David Edwards will come in and request to share particular information relative to items, particularly around the student transitions. And there may also be requests from this group around what questions do we need answers to.
You know, Dave, just listening to Hilda say that, and you and I were on this from kind of day one, it seemed like to me that when we were on the best practices group of the past, we did a lot of actual work. You know, we actually did implementation work, like with the achievement compacts. And what I'm kind of picking up here, Hilda, is we're moving more up, not all the way to the 30,000 foot level, because that's what I consider OEIB. But we're 15. But this is kind of a 15,000 foot level committee that we are going to focus on transitions. We're going to be basically a group that guides an agenda, guides policy, makes recommendations to OEIB, but the actual work now is staff with OEIB, staff in the Early Learning Council, staff in HEC, staff at ODE. That's a change from where our previous work was, where we were kind of getting our hands dirty because we really didn't have that infrastructure yet. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's an accurate assessment.
Dave, any comments on that?
Well, I'm hoping, you know, talking about our role in the OEIB and the role of this subcommittee, is we are going forth with the regional collaboratives throughout the state. And I think that's something that we should be offering on this subcommittee and the OEIB is some support, some resources for these regional collaboratives, and some way that we're tying them together. Now, I know the HEC will be working with them too, but I think there is a role for the OEIB on this. Like you've said, we've concentrated a lot on the achievement compacts in the past, and that's really an assessment system, but I don't think we've really come through a whole lot in how we can offer support from the state for resources and basically best practices they could be doing, and learning from them too, and spreading that to other regional collaboratives.
I really think that's a good point, that, you know, many of us are going to be attending the kickoff for the Regional Achievement Collaboratives on Thursday. And, you know, we've talked a lot about that being a real key to 40-40-20. The integration of the health care reform, integration with the Department of Human Services, etc., with education. And I guess I'd like to add to what Dave's saying, Hilda, that regional achievement collaboratives brought into this conversation.
I think there's an opportunity to do that with the focus on student transitions, but realizing that the charge of the now called Outcomes and Investments Subcommittee will be a primary, focus that they have is around the achievement compacts, around the investments such as the Regional Achievement Compact and the longitudinal data system. But I think, again, that's where we can pull information that's useful for this group to focus on what's happening around student transitions. That's one of the analyses, perhaps, that would be useful for this group to have.
So would this be a concrete example that a regional achievement collaborative, even though it's more focused with the other subcommittee, but I would like to know the education outcomes that those groups are identifying at what transition. So like, for instance, I know our collaborative, one of our key indicators will be ready for kindergarten. That will be a dominant outcome. Another one that's going to be a dominant outcome is third grade reading and high school graduation. So
nice visual.
Nice visual. So our committee would be focused on, hey, what outcomes are being identified? What are some things happening with the regional achievement collaboratives in the way of transitions and education benchmarks? Is that?
Certainly, and I can talk with David Edwards around how we might best provide that information to you all. And obviously also there'll be more information that comes out at the launch later this week.
Great. Kim, any thoughts along the line of the charge of this committee?
No, I think it's been captured already.
Okay. Dave, you don't have this in front of you, do you, this charge?
Let me take a look real quick.
Because I want to look at the suggested foci from Nancy, and I feel like I just need to know if you need me to read them out loud, or Seth, is there any way to get these to Dave?
I have emailed Kathy that she will go to them, so
Okay.
as soon as she gets that.
Okay, so we'll do our best, Dave, here. I don't want you being blind, so I'll try to read these a little bit here. So these foci came from Nancy. They were added by Nancy, and with the intent to provide a map for setting the year's scope of work. Would be great to talk about these and add suggestions, but again, these would be the bulleted points that support the charge up above. So I'll just go ahead and read them and go. And I'll just go through them and then stop for conversation. Participate in the development of an OEIB research agenda. Hilda, I think you've alluded to that, already. Make recommendations regarding communication, best practices, and evaluation of kindergarten assessment data. So I think, you know, our integration with the ELC, with Kim and Lynn, will help greatly with that, and Pam. Pam isn't on this group, is she? Okay. So there you have the one of the major initiatives in the state of Oregon, and that's the Early Learning Initiative. Support development of focused, prioritized plan for alignment of standards, assessments, and credentials across P20. So talk to me a little bit, Hilda, on credentials.
Partly what Nancy has addressed here is the fact that in conversations that occurred last year, there were policy implications around some of the needs to look at the qualifications of instructors. You probably recall some of the conversations that went along with dual credit group that met last year, composed of community college presidents and superintendents. So I think that word is in there just to remind us that you know, if there's still work that needs to be done in that area around recommendations, that we not forget that.
Okay. The educator effectiveness network, would that be part of the charge of this group? Is that alluded to in that bullet?
There are certainly some pieces of that that come under both the rural and remote, the next bullet, as well as the work around Common Core, state standards, and the 11 through 14 initiatives that are in the House Bill 3232 student initiatives. And then as you see, the fifth bullet picks up a lot of the work that's beginning to unfold in the network around how teachers are recruited, supported, retained, mentored, etc.
Okay, so that's where you saw that educator effective network is just built in within these.
And again, the outcomes and investments group will be looking at that they'll look at every single investment, because they'll be reporting back data to legislators. So as we get that, we can bring that forward and share it with you all.
You know, Hilla, a couple times today I've heard reference to the other subcommittees in their charge. Are we at OEIB today or in the near future going to look at everybody's charges?
I know that was on the September agenda, that there was feedback given to that, and Seth, is an updated version of that on today's agenda for them?
No, it is not updated pieces.
But we can certainly send out the most recent version that defines. We knew that today all the subcommittees might be refining their foci, so we could follow up with a final version to send out to everybody on this committee.
I'm the epitome of visual learner.
Yep.
And as most people are. And David will love this. You know, I'm going to post my language objectives on behind me there. No. But I'm a visual learner. I imagine I'd love to see a Venn diagram. Or seriously, or some sort of a visual to show me where we overlap with the other groups. Because I can sit here on this charge and drop very quickly below 15,000 feet.
Yeah.
You know, where, Senate Bill 290, the teacher evaluation, that's huge. The implementation of Common Core is huge. And I don't want to get into that because that's more K-12.
And it's also a state board agenda.
It's not a transition.
Right, exactly.
So I think we're going to be challenged, maybe myself, Mark is going to be challenged after a year of that kind of conversation to recalibrating to 15,000 feet on transitions. So I would love to see, when we get there, Hilda, some sort of a Venn diagram-ish model that, okay, stay in your own lane here with this committee because this group's going to do this over here.
That would be a great charge for me to bring back to our staff meeting on Monday, and we can work out something that actually does that.
Great. I know my staff is tired of hearing me saying the words, I need a pie graph. Okay.
Well, Mark, that's a good point. If I could just go back to the previous item, aligning standards and credentials.
Yes.
Do I hear a lot of anecdotal things about the writing and math transitions from high school to college, and them not aligning in ways that students, basically amounting to students aren't correctly prepared for entry-level writing or entry-level mathematical courses at college. Is that something we should be looking at?
I sure think it would be, David. I think it's a transition. So here's an example. You gave a very concrete example. I would see it as our group to look at the data and the investment and results of the remediation. And Dave focused on math. That's obviously, that whole compass test conversation. So,
well, there's also going to be some opportunities this year to look at the actions of the state board around the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium and what policies with working with the Higher Ed Coordinating Commission actually start to align the use of either the assessment data with applications or placements. So that's exactly where that transition work lands.
Great.
Thanks.
Hilda, a glaring thing for me here is the longitudinal database. Which subcommittee is on that guy?
The first action on the longitudinal database is the development of a business case, which is being shepherded by Peter Trumbo. Right. Many of us know his work in the past, and my guess is that also will be reviewed by the Outcomes and Investments Subcommittee. Okay. But we can certainly, I know that will also be brought to the entire OEIB. And I think this is one of the things that we don't have the full OEIB agenda for the year. A lot of these things may come to the OEIB board, and then there may be a charge given to a subcommittee to take something and move with it.
Yeah, and that gets back to that Venn diagram concept is, OEIB is going to be the umbrella looking at the charge, each subcommittee, but there's overlap. And, this isn't the perfect science, but if we could at least have a general philosophy on what we do. Because for instance, my mindset is not the creation or the investment of the longitudinal database, but that this group would be heavily involved in what's on it.
Using it.
Yeah, using it, and how does a KRA, how do we deal with the SSID numbers, in transition with the KRA seamlessly into kindergarten? David, we just went down the issue of remediation. In dealing with that almost on a daily basis lately, the whole confidentiality issue, FERPA issue, and we just get paralyzed into nothing and hoping that someday longitudinal database will fix all this. So, long story short, I would recommend, whether it's worded as a bullet or not, but our involvement with the transitions, because that's what the database is all about, is eliminating, making it a seamless system. Comments, Kim, Dave?
Excuse me?
Do we have any other comments on either that database comment or anything else in the foci that Nancy identified?
No, not at this point.
Okay. We don't have enough of a quorum to approve it, Hilda. So what I'm recommending is we bring this...
Any other questions or anything on any of these others? So we're kind of...
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're good.
Good.
What I'm recommending is that we bring the charge for approval at our next best practices in subcommittee or November. We don't have enough of a quorum to approve it. I do think it should be approved.
Okay. If Kate comes, does that make a difference? When Kate comes?
Okay, Mark.
Yes.
Yep. Do you guys feel like you could approve this? Do you have enough information to approve this today? Kim, Dave?
I do.
And Yvonne has already
Giving our blessing?
reviewed this. Yes.
Okay.
Our committee charge?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so when Kay comes, we'll go ahead and move on.
David, I sent you a document, so I'm hoping it's there waiting for you, that let me know if that's going through.
Okay. I'll look in my other folders.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that, make an adjustment, but let's go ahead and move us on. We have some folks who are patiently waiting and certainly enduring some of this right now. So we have Dave with us. He's the Assistant Superintendent for ODE, and the ELL Strategic Plan. This, come on up, Dave, would be great. And this was a major component of both the OEIB and the ODE Strategic Plan, if you remember way back when. We obviously know our second language learners are not performing at the levels that they need to be. And so this is obviously a high priority for Rob. Every time I see Rob at a committee meeting or whatnot, he mentions this. So getting a statewide plan and moving forward, I think, is very, very exciting, very exciting. I know the districts that I work with have been asking for this for a long time. So no pressure, man, but we are very, very excited to hear where you are. So this is an update on where we are with the strategic plan.
Thank you very much, and like Chair Mulkiel said, I'm David Bautista, Assistant Superintendent for the new created Equity Unit in the Office of Learning. The Department of Education is going through a transformation, so we're calling it the whole structure Office of Learning. I brought probably the whole unit with me, so you can see them at least in terms of who they are and what they're doing. It is an outstanding opportunity to have this charge with people who understand what we need in terms of moving this particular field. Probably you know already Marquisha Smith. She comes very well prepared with a doctoral degree, and her research is about African American, and she has developed certain policies to implement to move that population to get an opportunity in the education field. Martha Martinez, also from the University of Oregon, has a PhD, and her dissertation was in dual language programs and segregation. It's precisely what we're talking about. April Campbell is a very well-respected person in the community, of Native American community, and she is going to be taking care of all the Native American students in the state to provide that voice, that needed voice. Winston Cornwell, in addition to the team, he works on Office for Civil Rights. Kim Miller, she works taking care of the Office of English Language Acquisition. Is a federal program that oversees all the districts that have students with English language learners and are submitting a plan to the Oregon Department of Education and providing feedback, technical assistance. Basically, she has been alone for a long time, but now she has support. Jonathan Ferno, Title 1C migrant, another important population because of the nature of our state. He works on migrant programs, 21 to be exact, and last year we had 70 summer programs, very promising work that the districts did. Rudy Rivera Lindstrom comes well prepared from Tiger 12, equity studies, multicultural education, and she's doing her dissertation on immigrant students, undocumented students. Tim Blackburn, very well prepared on English for speakers of other language from New York, and a strong background on parent involvement. He's very well known in the migrant community because he worked for Willamette ESD last year. He's barely new from New York. And we have our executive, Victoria Garcia and Leslie Kaiser. That's the unit that's going to be leading this work.
David, great job hiring and getting going. I know you guys have been going 100 miles an hour to put this, it's a brand new part of the department. And so really recognize that and appreciate your effort here in the last couple of months. Would you mind putting a name to a face in the audience?
Yes, Marquisha, Rudy Ann, Kim Miller, Timothy Blackburn, Marta Martinez.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to be presenting is a very basic overview of the map of district with English language learners, so you can see a visual. The very important work that we have right now with the English language proficiency assessment 21st century overview and who is involved, the Oregon English language learner data, and the review of the important part of the state strategic plan. So with that, this is how it looks in the state. From the purple 0 to 11, the blue 34 to 11, and you can see the numbers, how it consolidates into the I-5 corridor, a number of English language learners to amount more than 35,000 right there in the corridor. In the other, we have nearly 60 to 69 school districts that have 100 or less English language learners. So that's the interactions that we need to have. We have districts, as superintendent told me in one of the meetings, David, we have one English language learner and we're projecting how we're going to be increasing, because coming one comes with family and it's a network. So that you begin to, so we're already projecting what is going to be happening with the modification of that particular district.
David, just a quick question. What percentage are Spanish speaking when you say second language learner on that map? Do you have any idea?
79%.
Okay, what's the second?
The second largest language, Russian, then Vietnamese, and it's moving the Somali very quickly.
You'd say those are the top four?
Top four. Vietnamese also. We're going to see it right now. This is the English language proficiency 21st century, and this is a very important work because it's going to be solidifying the assessment, the standards. That's a very good work that Stanford University is taking care of. The drawback of that is that they are working and they are giving the 11th state time for feedback, but the time is not like we used to have here in Oregon, that we have almost a year to be preparing, moving little by little, and all the field was informed and all the field was ready to go. This is a different set of logistics. However, the important part is the recipient, being Stanford University, is organizing the standards with a very good base in the institute that is called Understanding Language. This institute is headed by one of the most respected researchers in the area of language acquisition, which is Dr. Kenji Hakura. Dr. Kenji Hakura is going to be here in our second English language conference at the state level in March 13 at Eugene Conference Center. he is coming for free because he said, my team, he called us, our team, our colleagues in Oregon deserve this presentation, so he's going to be giving that his work for free. These are the other important piece is that there are going to be 11 states and maybe more that want to participate in this effort and have a solid and more robust assessment for English language learners. Many of the things that they have as strains are going to put together, and we as a lead, we're going to have this opportunity to have a very robust, better than what we have right now.
What's the timeline?
The timeline, next week we're presenting the standards for the board. Hopefully they can approve with the explanation, and we're moving into a roll-up plan to prepare teachers across the state. And then the assessment will come in as a pilot in 1 year?
As a pilot?
Pilot.
Well, it's operational 2067.
Fully operational too.
So far, so 15.
Has there been conversation how this aligns with the implementation of Smarter Balanced Common Core?
Yes, it had to be aligned to the Common Core.
So it's a year behind.
Yes. The Oregon statistics, this is what we have. The total number of English language learners currently is 58,000. Number of English language learners receiving service, 55,000, because remember, parents have the right to waive. Okay? So that's the waiver is 3,000 parents for different reasons. The bulk of our numbers of English language learners is obviously at the elementary with 42,000, and whatever practices we're having, we're exiting students to secondary from 6th grade all to 12, we have 8,000. Number of high school English language learners, 8,100. This is extremely important, and I added in every single presentation, because once the students arrive to proficiency, they are exited from the program. So we need to keep in mind those students, because we have outside another 58,000. So 58,000 and 58,000 is nearly 120, 116,000. Out of 116,000, we have 560,000 students in the state of Oregon. That means 1 out of 5 is or was an English language learner. That changes right away when I've been explaining this to our leaders. That changes the perspective of what are we doing.
David, do we? I remember when I was at the district that almost guilt when they graduated and they're now in the monitor status and we're not providing support. And they're kind of out there. Have we looked at any longitudinal data on once kids exit the program, their high school graduation and college graduation rates?
We haven't gone to college. What we did, a very preliminary study, we looked into a cohort of 5th graders in 1996, because that was the cleanest data that we were able to gather. 5th graders identified as English language learners and moving all the way to graduation to 12th grade. We identified 5,000. From those, 2,300 were on track or graduate on track on 4 years. The data on those particular students were better in terms of all the characteristics. Low socioeconomic status were higher in graduating. The important variable for that particular group was they needed to be exited before high school, because once they get to high school, it's very difficult for them to get into the requirements, the high requirements of high school.
Yeah, I remember we tracked our kids that were 4s. Our 4s were struggling, and it was.
These are the districts with the higher numbers, and the second, the bottom is with percentage. As you can see, those particular, from Salem Kaiser all the way to Gresham Barlow, there are more than 30,000 English language learners. Woodburn with 44%, all the way to Hood River, 21%. So the impact in the organization and the way that they're going to be structuring their programs is critical for these districts. Now let me get into the strategic plan update. In a very big overview, we can say that we've been moving towards the 8 goals. Probably the goal number 6 that talks about assessment is the smallest one that we have worked, and also the preschool. We are at the beginning stages to work with. However, we have very good connections in terms of what is going to be the work that it's going to be for next steps. Assigning people to these particular areas and then moving on. In goal number 1, we don't have a problem in terms of tools and resources. There's plenty of information. Just as a reference, I brought 2 national studies published in May 2012 about national evaluation of Title III, May 2012, and the assessment of literature of instructional programs for English language learners done also by the federal government. So we have plenty of information. We just, issue or request for proposal for a dual language program, and the different districts that are applying ask for resources. We provide one particular university that has 9 citations about work for English language learners in terms of the things that they're looking for. One particular district wanted to know about Native American dual language programs, and that site had 300 citations about native language instruction for Native Americans. In systemic approaches, capacity building, this is extremely important because from the legislature all the way to the classroom teacher and the community around need to know the importance of these programs. So that the capacity building in terms of information continues, is in our website, is with our team. With any presentation that we ask, do you know about the ELL strategic plan, state strategic plan? Do you know about Equity Lens? We marry those 2 documents for the importance of planning and looking ahead of what is going to be the projection. In goal number 3, this one is in charge with districts beginning to have the conversation with parents and what is meaningful information. We're going to have a discussion of getting information from the districts regarding what particular models or programs are using to engage families. Probably the key word right here is meaningful engagement. This one I'm extremely happy to report. Looking at the cadre of experts, we can go far, and going far it just takes difficulty for the experts outside, because there are plenty of experts across the nation that can support. But just tapping into our own public universities and our own private universities, we have had a tremendous response from the internal universities looking at how we support. Obviously, all the way Medford, South, Eugene, Oregon State University, Eastern Oregon, promise the Faculty of English Language Certification promise a presentation on March. They sent me the document. It's an outstanding document about how to support teachers in rural communities. because the description that they give is an outstanding document to pay attention. Or universities, obviously, all the way to Portland State University, they're providing support in the way of research about closing the achievement gap of those schools that have a high concentration of English language learners, and that continues. These expert practitioners also, they have a compromise with us in terms of looking at or request for proposal for the dual language and review, being part of our team of reviewers. Develop a process for replicating the different strategies. In the literature of our programs at the state level looks at 19 dual language programs in the state of Oregon. If you go to Medford, Phoenix Talent is one that has that tradition. You go eastern and you have NISA, you have the Four Rivers Charter School. You go to Hood River, you have a dual language program in Hood River. You go north, Portland Public Schools, they have a couple of dual language. Salem Kaiser, Corvallis. So there's different programs that we need to analyze and start looking at the elements that they have in place to produce the results that they're having currently. We're working on a project for, I think for years, the Oregon Department of Education has been working on what is the implementation science, scale up. So that's one part that we would like to look at in terms of what are the models, look at the frameworks of implementation science, and start providing that to the districts that want to develop these kind of programs. So that's in the works. This is the one that the status has not yet started, but we have worked with the assessment department right now. Probably in November, one of the big steps is to look at the assessment that we're doing. Right now, by the decision of our Deputy Superintendent Rob Saxon, is to create an assessment, an authentic assessment that provides meaningful information for our districts. What happened with the annual measurable annual objectives right now is that it's divided in 3, AML1, AML2, AMB, and AML3. AML1 is how many English language learners are moving from one level to another level. So how can we refine that to really provide information to our districts? Because they're teaching English for all our students. The second one is divided in 2, and that is less than 5 years, how many English language learners have exited the program, and more than 5 years, how many students have exited the program. So that is important to understand for districts. The third one, I think at this point there's overwhelming evidence that Title I shouldn't be assessing a second time at English language learners. It's something that already the federal government is reflecting on to see how they're going to be moving out of that. It's part of a study and continue to analyze what will be the best evidence to see that our students are achieving academic content, because that's the nature. English language arts, when they're proficient in English, and academic content, in this case, math, science, or social studies. In goal 7, also, this is an important area because that calls for professional development. I believe that right now we're developing a plan, for example, for the most pressing activity that is going to happen. The approval of the new English language standards, and then moving into prepare professional development, prepare a cadre of professionals around the state to continue that and disseminate this information to all of our districts that have English language learners. In the work that we're doing on universal preschool, I am happy to report that we receive information about assessing Spanish-English bilingual preschoolers. We contact the author, Sandra Barreco. She knew about our program and she will be willing to work with us. She is based in Washington, D.C. and whatever we can interact with her, she's willing to support Oregon efforts to have a good assessment for preschoolers and kindergartners. This is Sandra Barreco. And I will give you the source. So at this point, that's the big aspect of update of our ELO plan.
About 5 minutes for
any
Q&A
questions?
for Davey. Well, I'll get this show on the road here. I've got several Davey. Thinking of 15,000 foot level for transitions. And when I look at the ELL plan up there, I mostly think along the lines of K-12. However, there's certainly peak preschool included in there. And then you've referenced higher ed a lot as research and collaborators. What I'm wondering, Davey, where we are right now with students in the P20 pipeline. So we have a Russian-speaking 3-year-old. What is the future for assessing that child before kindergarten? Then, let's say another Russian-speaking child that moves in his junior year and is a 2. What levels of support are offered at Eastern and Western when they enter their freshman year? Is there a plan that can provide that kind of information as conducive, as accurate as that one can for K-12? That's a question.
Yes. One of the few interactions that we have had with the preschool team, the JADA team, we participated in a conference 1 month ago. The federal government provided information about the language and culture approach for preschoolers. They are making a very big emphasis to look at the child and look at the resources that the child brings in terms of language and culture. And if the child brings whatever other language, try to serve the students in that particular language. And if not, inform the parents of the importance cognitively to continue to develop their language. English is going to come, and the research is clear about the English is going to come. The problem is we're going to be losing their language. So at least in preschool, the work in terms of prenatal also looks at supporting the family to understand that the child is alive, the child should be read. The information for the family, something simple. Talk to your child as a person right now. And moving on in terms of transitions, there are programs. The question is going to be financially, how we organizing our resources. I can give you my example in Woodland. As a bilingual director, I had 70% English language learners. So the 0.5 helped me very well. But as a superintendent, I began to see the movement. And the movement was we exiting a lot of students. So from 1 year to another year, I was going to be losing $1 million in movement. So how I'm going to be looking at those resources in a different lens to continue serving my program. The very big learning from that was the influx of Somalian students that we were not prepared. We knew how to serve Hispanic students, we knew how to serve Eastern European students, but we didn't have experience. So out of the simple, get someone to explain at the administrative level the culture. Get someone to explain parents that different system. So that's a professional right there. And then start with instructional assistants to support elementary, middle school, and high school. That's how we started, steps later by later.
Hilda, do you see that HEC developing an ELL plan?
It has not risen yet, but I just have to say that this HEC is having its first formal meeting as the newly appointed HEC on Thursday, and they are starting to develop a scope of work, and they have already been given quite a few tasks from legislators, primarily around affordability and access, etc. I have not heard this one specifically referenced, but it certainly would be one that David might want to take forward as a reminder of this continued process of services.
And Mark, what was that role for the HEC you were mentioning?
Well, I'm just looking at this plan and the nice status update that they made and how they're moving forward on K-12 and dipping their toe in pre-K. Is there a transition plan for kids moving through the system? Is there an ELL plan that the HEC is going to create? That's the question.
Well, I'll bring it up then, sure. I agree with Hilda. I haven't heard any discussion of it as of this point, but it's something we should look at. I think there also is, again, anecdotal, but transitioning from high school ELL programs into college, particularly in writing, academic writing, there's some concern students aren't succeeding like they should.
The question I have, Kate Turan, the question I have is, are the resources easily identified to support your needs when you have an influx of Somalis or any other kinds of students that come into the district, and you didn't anticipate it?
And that's exactly what I was trying to convey in terms of being a superintendent in Woodburn and having that particular group. They have the right to be served. So how I'm going to be reorganizing my budget in order to support the students, and any kind of resources, we're talking about equity, any kind of resources to look at what are the needs. And like I said, we need to understand the culture. The first thing was to get someone from a professional field in Somali to come and talk to the administrative team about the culture and about the families. And then have a liaison from the families to the institution to create that connection. And then create instructional supports, probably not at the highest level we would want, instructional assistants that were bilingual in the language of the Somali group, because we have different languages, Arabic also. And from there start thinking, okay, how I'm going to be restructuring now my budget. If I have a 0.5, how it's going to be looking at.
If you think back on our group that had the budget suggestions, and as we moved to outcome-based budgeting, ELL to me is the poster child of why we have to change things. You lose funding with more success, and you also get dinged on your state report card and other measurements when those kids move out of the program as well. So we kind of have a system of rewarding mediocrity, if you will, and the kids are falling in between. So, you know, that hasn't changed overnight, but believe me, we've had those conversations. David, this is wonderful. You know, Hilda, just I'll throw a recommendation as we move forward. I would love to almost see this as a standing agenda item. You know, I don't know if we can fit it in every time, but I would love to go over just one component, have your staff report out, and really talk about our progress and move, because and I just want to applaud you that, you know, I've kind of been watching from afar, as in many districts have, that you've really worked hard to get a good team, and that's your starting point. And that's exciting, and looking forward to moving forward with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move us along to our next presentation, and then at the end of the meeting I'll come back and have that motion to approve our charge. But let's go ahead and have Gary come in from the Audit Division to talk about the Secretary of State preparation audit. So, Gary, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Davey.
Mark, please proceed. I'm just going to switch phones to my car phone. I'll be back on in just a few minutes.
Great.
Go ahead, proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, and I assume Andrew?
Yes, that's correct. Andrew is the principal auditor who led this audit, and he's here to answer all the hard questions that you may have. Hopefully I can distinguish the easy from the hard, and I can answer some of them. So let me kind of walk through the basis for the audit and what we found. The objective that we set forth for ourselves was to determine whether state and local actions could be taken to improve preparation and professional development for beginning teachers. And this actually entailed multiple agencies. We were working with the Oregon Department of Education, Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, 197 school districts, as well as the universities, public universities. So we were trying to look at all the agencies that have some influence on teacher preparation and success once they're hired. So we looked at the ways that student-teacher practices could be improved. We looked for ways to increase confidence in the Oregon teaching colleges and their graduates, and also improving the professional opportunities that the school districts could provide to beginning teachers. Because we saw that as a critical aspect, not just in terms of the teaching preparation, but once they're in the first 3 to 5 years. So the basis that we started from was the idea that Oregon has adopted the recommendations of the National Council for Accreditation of Teacher Education. And we focused on 4 of those recommendations, which were expanded student teaching experiences that work closely and coordinated with the college's academic coursework, teacher preparation being a partnership between teaching colleges and school districts, that student teachers should have trained, qualified teaching college staff and coaching teachers, and that the teaching colleges should work with school districts to develop new rewards and incentives for coaching teachers and teaching college staff. And what we ended up looking at was that we found that there was variance in how well public teaching colleges coordinated their coursework and student teaching experiences. And we also found varying degrees of the partnerships between the colleges and the school districts. We did kind of an assessment. We interviewed the deans of the various teaching colleges to get some sense of where they saw their progress in implementing a number of these recommendations.
Gary, did you do all 7 of our universities?
Yes, we did.
OIT doesn't. Okay,
So
all of them that have the program?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And we did visit Willamette and just tried to get some sense of what was happening in some of the other private colleges, but our charter restricts us to auditing public entities, so we stuck with that, and we still have plenty of work to do. And what the main message from this chart is that there is progress in some areas and there's more progress that's needed. So I'm not going to go into any detail on these. And again, it's a snapshot of the perceptions of the deans of where the progress was in actions. And incidentally, all of this is on our audit report in more detail on our website if you care to get into the various aspects of it. One of the things that we saw was that there was opportunity for more use of performance indicators in helping potential students who wanted to become teachers, as well as universities, the teaching colleges, and even the school districts in having more performance information. But we did a survey and we asked the teaching colleges, we sent a survey out to the school districts, to the 197 school districts, asking the superintendents their perceptions on a variety of things, as well as actions they were taking on the mentoring side. And this is one of the questions, and we got responses from about half of them. And what we found was more than half did not believe that the teaching colleges were doing a sufficient job in preparing teacher candidates for their teaching assignments. Again, this is a perception, but from the standpoint of communications, we felt like there really needed to be more discussion between the teaching colleges and the school districts about what more they could do to help those teachers succeed. And so from the standpoint of identifying that it's a need for communication and understanding, we think that it's a real significant result from our audit report. It may be that they're doing as well as they can, but until there's some communication back and forth, we think there's a real opportunity there for a better connection and better relationship between those teaching colleges and the districts.
I have a question here, Mr. Blackburn. Is there any kind of evaluation form or evaluation that happens after a student is placed and information to go back to the college? I mean, how formalized is the accountability system if there is one?
Yeah, I think that depends on the university and their the level of effort that they put out to assess how well they're working. I think we found that it varies in terms of a more formalized approach. There's definitely an informal approach to that. And I think a little bit of what we were reporting on is that there is a need for that information and a need for those performance indicators.
Exception or not, 51% support.
That is not percent, that would be 51
out of about
yes,
100.
I want to make sure we're not projecting to the whole population.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a perfect time to kind of dovetail the audit with activities that are underway. Prior to the audit beginning, there had been discussions among the deans of both publics and privates around the adoption of a common instrument. It had been piloted, and then there needed to be refinements made that would include both a follow-up to graduates themselves who are employed, as well as employer satisfaction. Now, it will ask a lot more than just one question, and it will be directed at the individual at the school where the new teacher is employed. And the idea is that it wouldn't come to the administrator until June, July. So there's a full year that they have worked with the new graduate that's been hired. And likewise, it gives the candidate a chance to have completed a first year also. So this is such good movement forward that we will all be using the same instrument. It'll all be able to come at one time. So principals won't go, well, did I get a survey? Did I need to fill that out?
They'll do it anyway.
Yes.
You know what's really fascinating about this statistic, and that I would have guessed that your blue line would have been farther, because it's a perception, open-ended perception question, and I think it's good data to show right there. However, what makes me, knowing the reality of what's going on in K-12, they may have said 51%, but it's a lot higher percentage than that of them retaining those teachers after 3 years. So, you know, to me, it's almost the siloing of miscommunication, because superintendents are going to say they're not ready, and I got to do all the training, and they're not ready, but they still retain those teachers. So that might be something longitudinally to look at, because you can point a finger at someplace else, but the reality is, through the pipeline, what levels of support are we going to make our teachers successful?
Well, we do get into the mentoring part, it may be a spoiler alert, but you know that the mentoring programs in the school districts aren't that strong either.
That's my point. Yeah. That is just my point. It's almost some of the mindset of finger pointing that we do throughout the pipeline that doesn't help kids finish.
And I think from the whole emphasis of the education now is to give those student teachers more exposure in the classroom, and to bring that back to the teaching college for discussion. And so I think having those faculty in the teaching colleges, having a better connection with the school districts and having that dialogue going on is going to make them better faculty members also, and more attuned to the realities that the teachers are facing in the classroom. So I think there's learning that can go on in all parts of this in terms of kind of creating better teachers that are more likely to succeed on day one, which is really the goal of a teaching college. So, one of the things, when talking about these performance indicators, we suggested that there be a set of them, but we also emphasize that they be indicators, that measures tend to take on a life of their own, and sometimes they create problems or misperceptions or incentives that create challenges in terms of actually succeeding with the goals. So we wanted to encourage more measures of teacher success, of teaching colleges, and being able to look at what Oregon's doing relative to other states and kind of learn from them. But we also wanted to provide some caution that we've all read stories about No Child Left Behind turning into kind of a nightmare for some school districts where the incentives were so strong or the penalties were so large that it turned into less of a measure and more of just a means of kind of gaming the system. So from our standpoint, we always, as auditors, look at indicators and measures and data as a representation, and not always an accurate one, but something that can add to the dialogue and discussion, but doesn't necessarily give you a simple mechanical answer to did this work or not work. So that's just a cautionary thing that I think we would do in every case. And if you look at our audit reports, we aren't just relying on measures, we're looking at the management systems around those measures to see whether they are actually working okay and the measurement system is wrong, or maybe measuring the wrong things. So we just wanted to put that cautionary in there. For example, in looking at these measures, we found that only 3 of the 6 teaching colleges are tracking their graduates once they enter the workforce to see what's happening with them. And there are a lot of, this is not in the audit, but a lot of teachers or graduates of teaching colleges who are not teaching and wondering what's happened to them, and was it, on what basis did they commit a lot of their time and resources to undertake that career, and why didn't it work out for them? Is it that there aren't a lot of jobs? Is it that it turned out not to be the job they envisioned? And understanding those things, I think, would help those prospective students better anticipate whether that's the career track for them.
Let me ask a question here. Do we know whether or not that's a resource issue? Do the institutions or the school colleges have the resources to do a longitudinal study?
We know that the universities are doing more of that tracking here in Oregon on what's happening to their graduates. And I'm not sure what's happening exactly in the teaching college area, but we know that that's one of the indicators that more of the universities are looking at in terms of their strategic planning, and other states are doing considerably more tracking of their graduates as well. The internet is one of the benefits, I think, that's coming out of that they can track their graduates, their alum, for a variety of reasons, and their careers are one part of it. What we found in other states in terms of these kinds of indicators were hiring and retention data, looking at the graduates and their employers in terms of success and satisfaction, measuring student growth attributed to the teaching colleges themselves, and things like summarizing the results of teacher evaluations that were undertaken as student teachers were out there in the districts, and using that as a basis for assessing how well the teaching college is doing in preparing teachers. Another aspect that we looked at was the licensing, and we had some concern about when teachers get certified or licensed by Teacher Standards and Practices, that one of the determinants is, did the teaching college teacher determine that the student was properly trained to teach in a school district? That's kind of a self-assessment in one way, as well as an assessment of the student. So to the degree that other states are exploring other more independent means of assessing the student and his or her portfolio, we felt like that might be a means of providing some independent assessment, not only of the student, but of the teaching college and how well they did in preparing that student. Washington, Wisconsin, and New York are requiring their candidates to pass a teacher preparation assessment tool that's administered by a private contractor, and that was developed. That's the Stanford?
Yeah, at TPA by Stanford University.
So it's another means of providing an objective, independent assessment of a student's preparation for working in a school district and getting that license. So, we looked at the school districts and how well they were doing in terms of professional development, supporting those newly hired teachers. And just because what we saw in the research literature was that the first 3 to 5 years of a student or a newly hired teacher is critical in terms of their growth and also what that reflects in terms of student achievement. And key aspects of that are high quality mentoring, ongoing learning opportunities once they're in a learning community type setting, and also developing some kind of a good, effective performance evaluation for that new teacher that provides constructive recommendations for their growth and development. So one of the questions we asked was how well the districts were doing providing professional development and support. And the question we asked was, what written policies, plans, or procedures does your district have that beginning teachers participate in a mentoring program? And 67 said they did not have any kind of a requirement or plans or procedures that these new hired teachers participate. 38 said yes. 4 didn't really know. So from the standpoint of those districts, we didn't see a strong kind of attention to the mentoring side of it as well. So that is an area where we saw some, a need for growth. But we also saw the challenges that came with trying to find time in those experienced, high-quality coaching teachers' days that they could spend it with a newly hired teacher to help them. And that is one of the critical, I think, resource issues that comes to bear in this kind of a setting, is that if you want highly capable leadership teachers in the school district to help those newly hired, then someone needs to be there in their classroom when they're not there, or you need to have a commitment of an extra teacher to that school building, or maybe sharing among a couple school buildings to work with that teacher, and that is extra teachers that many districts don't have. And we did point out the rural or the smaller districts, smaller schools, are especially challenged in that way because they don't necessarily have any excess capacity for a teacher to leave their classroom to help a new teacher. So the larger districts may be in a slightly better position, but and especially the other side of the rural districts, if I were to use that term, is that sometimes the teaching college is hundreds of miles away, and the idea about that connection between the teaching college and the school district is more difficult. There's a great working relationship between Western Oregon and Salem-Keizer, where they have special classrooms set up so that student teachers can come observe experienced teachers teaching, and that isn't always possible when you're 100 miles away from a possible partner school district, and the connection between that teaching college and that school district is more of a distance issue than anything when you're trying to make sure that the faculty have a good connection. So I think there are going to be some special cases that you're going to have to face in terms of dealing with some of the more rural districts and how they connect up with the teaching colleges.
We're looking at about 5 minutes.
It's just one quick question. Do we know if there's an organized effort to have a retired teacher corps to support any of this?
Have you read any of that?
Did not hear of any of that information.
I can respond to simply sharing that during the time from which this audit began to when it completed, we were successful with legislation last year that funded the Network for Quality Teaching and Learning. So it is now, there are now 75 school districts that have formally received funding for mentoring programs. And it also addresses the performance assessment There is a system that's being designed to create fidelity, independent evaluations on a sampling basis, and also to fund there'll be a total of 5 partnership districts that look at those pieces around retention and also clinical experiences. So we're this has been just a nice dovetail between what the findings pointed to and the direction that OEIB had recommended with the Network for Quality Teaching and Learning. So as far as retired educators, there have been some connections. OEA has had a pool of folks that have often stepped in. I know we had a pilot at Western Oregon that lasted about a year and a half. It needs sustained funding to make that happen because retired people change their minds over time, they move, etc. So, you know, there is, I think the investment that we're making in the full-time mentoring project is a good step in the right direction, and then creating a virtual network for support. We actually are also looking at a rural e-mentoring program that we just met last week with the director of that program from New Teacher Center, because that's exactly what would help those people who are in geographically isolated areas. And they do have some retired educators in that group. Thank you.
And we kind of outlined some of the limitations on resources here that only 17 of 190 school districts in 2012-13 had opportunities to get funding support for mentoring. So I'm going to go quickly here. Our key recommendations were to develop standards and guidelines for professional development, address professional development funding for high-quality mentoring, for identifying and offering needed professional development, and providing professional development for school districts in remote areas. Help school districts offer meaningful professional development aligned with Oregon's model core teaching standards. Help the districts create teacher evaluation systems. Gather, analyze, and report on the effectiveness of graduates of Oregon's public teaching colleges. Teacher Standards and Practices Commission should consider requiring an independent performance assessment and adding a video component to the work sample requirement to observe teacher candidates' classroom skills. And as I said, our audit's on the website, so please read it. If you have more questions, I'm happy to answer any more you have right now.
Questions for Gary or Andrew?
If any come up in the future, feel free to give Andrew a call or send him an email. He'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, can I just add a comment, Mark? This is David.
You bet. Please, David, go ahead.
Yeah, just I came in kind of late, but so I didn't hear the whole thing. But I do like what I hear. It sounds like we're concentrating on the right things in this report with supporting teachers, which is also the research I've read, is that it's very critical those first years, even up to 5 years, that they get support and mentoring, and I'm glad we're looking at that. And I'm glad that we're avoiding what I see sometimes in teacher evaluation systems and standardized testing gone crazy, and I'm really glad the state's looking at more thoughtful ways of assessing and evaluating beginning teachers. So just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Great, thanks, David. Nancy will have a response to the audit.
It is here. It's in the booklet.
It's in the
booklet? Yeah, it was
booklet?
dated in August.
Okay, so her response is included, and if there's any follow-up from the audit that any members of the committee would like from that, just let Hilda know. Okay, thanks guys, appreciate it.
It may be that you all decide that you would like to hear from some of the partnership programs later in the year, or some of the efforts that are underway with the survey. So just let us know on that, or to talk with members of the preparation programs, the OUS office, OEA, whomever.
I would like to see, this isn't tomorrow, Hilda, but at some point, how the implementation's going for the strategic initiatives in this area, such as the mentoring grant.
Yeah.
So just an update on those in general, and how many districts, blah, blah, blah. That I think would be anything that care about
Excellent.
our investments that correlate to the audit.
I agree.
Okay, great. I'm going to move us back to that original motion. So let's move back to the task. And it is, now that we have a quorum, so
Minus page 1.
yeah, but I'm going to confuse my own commentary. Anyway, let's go ahead and go back to the subcommittee charge. And
Right there.
so we have the subcommittee charge, and we talked about it, the purpose. We talked about the foci. Again, this doesn't have to be, this thing can be an evolving document if we want to move it in the future. But basically, this key change of transitions, looking at the 15,000 foot level, P20. Can I get a motion to approve the charge as stated?
I so moved.
It's been moved by Kim. Do I hear a second?
I second.
It's been seconded by Kay. Any discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the charge as stated. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Dave, you good on that?
Aye.
Okay, no opposition.
Aye.
Thanks, Dave. Motion passes. Okay, let's conclude here. The next item up is the review of tasks and details on the next meeting. So
Did you get that?
Yes.
we got it. Thanks, Dave. Would you mind first of all summarizing some to-dos for this meeting?
Yes, I certainly heard that you'd like to think about the ways in which the transition points are embedded into your topics that are outlined for the year. And I think that Yvonne has a beginning structure for how she can coordinate the topics that relate to that across the year. I also heard that there'd be a real concern or a need to outline the relationship of the other subcommittees with each other and the OEIB, and that you suggested that it would be useful to have a visual. You also mentioned that it would be important for you all to stay connected with the transition points around the regional achievement collaboratives as those move forward and have results, as well as the longitudinal data system. And you would like to consider bringing David back in to report out on various components. I think originally Yvonne had suggested that he come back in May so that he could provide end-of-the-year data. But if there's some specific goals for which he has earlier data, then that can be earlier in the year's agenda. And then I heard that you would like an update on strategic investments related to this moment.
Done. This update.
Yes.
Very well done.
Okay. Do we have any other, let's just do a quick go around here on any other tasks, comments for the next meeting. Yeah. Okay. Dave, any comments for the next meeting, any closure here?
No, not at this point.
Okay. I think you've summarized it quite well, Hilda. Do you have any final comments?
We thought that the notebooks would be something that we could bring for you to each meeting. Everything that material-wise should be posted on the OEIB website and sent to you individually. David, I am going to go back and research what happened because you should have already received those materials, so I will follow up with you personally, make sure we're using the right email. Did you get the materials I sent a few minutes ago? I'll follow up with him.
Yeah.
And then this way, we'll bring the notebooks. They're always there. We have the equity lens in there. We can refer back to the PowerPoints and we keep adding to them a whole bunch things. So you don't have to worry about where's that file or whatever. Okay?
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice. Okay, and I'm assuming we don't have any public testimony. I sure hope those two have no testimony here